Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Tom Feroz. I'm an illustrator and a top teacher on Skillshare, where I've helped over 105,000 students unlock the world of commercial illustration. Welcome to the channel. So today I want to talk about something that I think is the most important question we ask as illustrators. And that question might surprise you. No, it's not how do I find my style? No, it's not how do I build a portfolio? No, it's not how do I find my first client? The most important question we ask is, get ready for it, how do I make work that I'm good at? How do I know what I'm actually good at? How can I make work that I'm happy with and my client's happy with? How do I get to a place where I'm confident that I can always deliver? This is a question I'm asking right now. I'm asking this as I'm planning my upcoming talk at Design Thinkers in Vancouver. And the title that I proposed when applying to do this talk was Strategies for Making Work You're Actually Good At. And it seemed good on paper. It felt very much like something I could teach too, because it's a question I've been asking a lot myself. How can I focus on doing work that I'm actually good at so I don't have to spend time struggling at things that I'm not so good at? And that's really at the heart of this question, right? There's work that we feel like when we do it, when we set out with a goal, we achieve that goal. The work works as planned. This is opposed to say we're trying to illustrate in a certain way. Every time we do it, we fail. We don't feel like we're good at it. That ends up being something that we don't think we're good at. Maybe we aren't good at. And the goal for us is, how can we do more of the stuff that we're actually good at? Because that's what's going to bring us more joy in our work. We're going to be able to enjoy a longer, happier career, and our clients will be happier with our work because we're confident that we can deliver for them, and we do deliver for them. And so the problematic thing about this idea of making work you're actually good at is this word good, because we're asking, how do I make good work? How do I make work that's good? You got to set that word aside and replace it with, how do I make work that works? How do I make something that when I have this intention and I go through the effort of building it, it creates the desired result, or it creates the desired result and more? That's, I think, what we want to focus on in our careers. That's just one thing that I'm working out is shifting from this language of good to works. I think that's really important. Another thing that I'm struggling with as I'm writing this talk, though, is just in feeling like I'm qualified to talk about this to a broad audience, people who are designers probably for the most part in this particular case, illustrators, people coming from all different places of life, different stages. Who am I to tell them how to make good work? Of course, the answer is I can't say things in a very broad, general, universal way. I have to talk about my particular experience. What has it looked like for me to find what I'm good at? What has it been like for me to find my good? What works and how did I find it? When I look at my own work, it's not exactly the best illustration in the world. I know people like it. I know my clients like it. I know that it's worth the money they're paying. I stand behind my work. But when I look at my work, I could pick it apart. I could say it's actually kind of like not that good if you hold it up to specific kinds of measures, like in terms of like the grand scheme of illustration. I'm not sure I'm going to go down as the best illustrator ever. So what am I doing here? What makes me say that I'm so good? It's not that I think I'm good. It's that I know that what I've made works. I know that when a client came to me and I asked them what they needed and why and how I could personally help them, when we put those things together and I worked with my client to, produce whatever the work was, the result was that they used it and it worked as intended. And then I got paid. And if it wasn't for that repeatedly happening in my life, I'd have no way of knowing if my work was good or not. All I would know is that I kind of like it. I have a few fans, but what's really good about it is that it actually works, and that I hope it brings something more to the picture than just pictures. Like there's some feeling that comes along with it, some sense of joy, some sense of purpose. A few episodes ago, I introduced a musical analogy to talk about how you kind of perform your sketches in the final. Your final illustration is like the performance, whereas your sketch is like the score, the musical notation that you follow to perform that score. I'm going to bring in another musical analogy, and that's the idea of like, well, I'll ask you, like, and you can let me know in the comments, what is your vocal range? If you were to sing in a choir, where would you get placed? If you've seen the movie Coda recently, where I can't remember the character's name, but she's in her music class and the music teacher's trying to like figure out who sings what part. He's like, you're bass, you're alto, you're tenor. I'm not gonna do his accent. But when I saw that happening, I was like, that's kind of like figuring out what we're good at. So again, I'll say, leave it, tell us in the comments, what are you? Are you a bass, a tenor? Are you an alto or a soprano? These are the 4 essential vocal ranges that you have. I know that I'm a tenor. If I were to try to sing in a low bass, I'm not gonna give you a very good note. I'll even try right now. Ice cream. That's about as low as I can go. And you can see in my face that I wasn't enjoying that note very much. But what about a soprano? Ice cream! Yeah, it doesn't sound so good. Now I'm second guessing myself. Do I really wanna sing on YouTube here? What about alto? In order to find alto, I'll have to find tenor. And I know that I'm tenor. Ice cream. That's my natural range right there. Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Okay, so that's kind of like a tenor. Not the best voice in the world, but that's where I'm most comfortable. Where are you most comfortable singing? Is it bass, tenor, alto, or soprano? The point is, when you know what your range is, then you know what you call it. And then when you're asked to do it, you can confidently sing from that range. Now, I know the illustration kind of falls apart because, well, I'm not exactly, the best singer here, but I'm gonna leave these in to demonstrate the fact that this is just a great illustration for my point. I really think there's so much about it. I'm imagining being in front of a crowd. So one thing I'm playing around with doing, and I don't do crowd work really, because I actually don't speak in front of stages or on stages very often. But I'm imagining being up on stage and just asking people, like, how many of you here sing bass? And then people would do a show of hands. And then I'd ask again, how many people of you sing tenor, alto, soprano? So everyone would show their hands. And then the next thing that I would ask them to do, without any further instruction, I'd say, basses, sing a bass note. And then I'm just imagining everyone singing bass, but not all singing the same note. It's gonna be kind of ugly. And then doing the same with the other 3 parts. Each one hopefully like being kind of like alto-y or soprano-y or whatever I'm asking to be sung, but also kind of bad. But then I just reset and I say, now I'm gonna give you a starting note. Basses, your note is this. Ice cream, or whatever the bass note is, and give them those notes to actually reference. And then when they sing those notes the next time, it's gonna be in unison. All the basses will be in unison, united. All the tenors, all the altos, all the sopranos. Right there, the illustration is like, when you know what range you are, when you're asked to sing a certain note, you can confidently sing that note. So the first part is just knowing what your range is, knowing what your voice is. The second thing is having a bit of direction, knowing what your direction is. And then when you put it all together, I would have all of the different vocal parts sing their part at the same time. And of course, we're gonna get this beautiful 4-note chord. Ice cream, ice cream, ice cream, ice cream. Make a major 7th. So the demonstration there is, that's when you know you're good. It's not that you might have a beautiful voice, but without the direction and the context that I've just talked about, your voice doesn't have a role to play. So that's maybe like the first big chunk, is like knowing your voice and then being given the direction and the context in which to use it, then it works. But here's, I think, the most powerful part of this analogy, is then I'd ask, who in this audience, when I asked what your part is, didn't know what your part is? You didn't know whether you were a bass or a tenor or a soprano or an alto or whatever. And people who would show their hands, I would say, you're my audience. you are the ones I want to talk to today. And I'd say the same thing, to here on the channel. If you're watching this and when I asked what your part is, did you think to yourself, I don't know what my part is? Well, in many ways, you're my audience today, and you would be my audience when I do this talk in next month. And if this is you, if you're one of those people who didn't know what their part was, you can also let us know in the comments that's you. That's okay. There's nothing bad about that. In fact, identifying this fact about you, not you saying, I don't know what part I play, I don't know what role I play, that's as valid of an answer as the answer of, oh, I sing bass, oh, I sing tenor. So this would be the powerful moment that I'm envisioning, is just people realizing, like, when you don't know what part you play or what your range is, what your voice is, then you don't know how to use it. And that's the position a lot of us will find ourselves in as illustrators, as creators, as artists, when we haven't found our voice, when we haven't had the chance to test out and be assigned a range. Now, it's different with illustration because it's not so cut and dried as like you're this, you're that. But we do need to identify what we're good at. And that's partly in our skill, in the art we make, in our craft. We need to know what we're good at. And we also want to know how it can be used. That will give us a sense of direction. So we would need to figure out what our markets are. What kind of context do we like illustrating for? It might be a whole bunch of different things, but it's not going to include everything. For me, it doesn't include comics. It doesn't include patterns for licensing, for instance. It might, but that's not really what my strength is. And it's certainly not in creating realistic portraits. My range is more in creating lively, buoyant images for businesses and brands with bright, bold colors and a sense of humor. I'm in that vocal range, or I'm in that art range, if you will. So part of it is understanding your craft, and then of course the other part is understanding what your market is, what your contexts are. And then you want to find the right clients, the right people who will use you within those markets, who will give you some direction of how you can use your art. And I'm not saying your client should give you art direction. Sometimes they do, especially when their role is actually art director. But what I'm really talking about here is just when we're doing commercial work, it's the needs of the visual problem, it's the needs of that client in that particular context that will help us understand what we're illustrating about. If it were a song and we were singing, we would know what we're singing for. What are we writing this song for? How are we going to write the song in such a way to use the voice we have as best as possible? If I'm called to write a song for a client, using this analogy still, I'm going to write a part that sounds really stinking good with tenor, especially the range of tenor that I am, because I'm actually a baritone. Like I'm more in the baritone tenor, not so much in the high end of tenor, which is too high for me and my voice cracks. You don't want your illustration voice to crack, and you don't want it to get all warbly and kind of raspy or whatever happens down in the low notes. Low notes like this. There's just no power in my bass. There's no power in my bass. There's more power in my tenor because I can project that voice. So this is on my mind. I'm really excited about this analogy, and I'm kind of just writing on stage here on the camera because I'm excited about it. I want to test it out a little bit. Let me know what you think. But also I wanted to bundle this in with what I'm really thinking about is this idea of what this most important question for illustrators is. And I really believe it's finding what we're good at. It's not just about finding our style. It's not just about finding clients or building the perfect portfolio. It's really about feeling like we know what we do and it fits in somewhere. So I'll leave you with that. Anyway, thank you for watching. My name's Tom Froese. I'll see you in the next video.